Hi, B20, chapter 3.3 today, looking at all about biomes and ecosystems. So biomes, you may have heard about a little bit in other science courses, but they are areas on Earth that have unique abiotic factors, and because of that, then they will have certain organisms that will be prevalent in those areas. So those biomes will have a certain climate, latitude, elevation, and temperature and precipitation. So the main biomes tend to range from polar ice at the North Pole going towards the equator, then the tundra, the taiga, the temperate forest, and then the tropical rainforest. And it would do the same, go the opposite as we go towards the Antarctic. The interesting thing about mountains too is as we see these biomes range from the equator to the North Pole, we sometimes see similar changes as we go up in elevation, like to the top of mountains, where at the top of the mountain it appears to be like polar ice, like the white frozen ice caps or ice peaks of mountains going down to what resembles tundra area and down as so this kind of is comparable to the biomes that go from the equator to the North Pole. So in terms of climate, that is the temperature and rainfall. You should know that it's these two primarily that are considered for climate, and climate is an average over around 30 years, whereas the weather would be something that is at one point in one time. Because our globe is not equally heated, that is why we have different climate in different places in the world. And so when we see that sunlight will hit the equator most directly, that's a very different temperatures there compared to how the sunlight would hit the North Pole at an angle. And sometimes, of course, as we are on the axis, we are at certain times of the year in our summer, the northern hemisphere, we are facing the sunlight more directly, get higher temperatures. And in our winter, we are tilted away from the direct sunlight and we get our lower temperatures in the wintertime. So the uneven heating is also what will cause certain patterns of rain. So a climatogram may have been something we looked at in Science 10, but basically we're looking at millimeters of rain indicated in the blue area, and the red line is the average temperature. So we can see in the 12 months of the year, our temperatures are low in January, February, November, December, and that is also where we see less precipitation, and the hotter temperatures here in the summer months and the higher temperature, the higher precipitation. As we compare climatograms of different cities, we'll notice that cities near very large lakes or oceans will have more moderate temperatures, and so they'll stay more moderate and similar around the year, and the precipitation will be much higher because of the amount of evaporated water in the air around large bodies of water like oceans. Okay, biome is a big ecosystem or group of ecosystems that have similar temperature, rainfall, altitude conditions, and there will be certain animals and plants that are adapted to survive in that biome that will be found there. You guys can check out the World Biomes link. So as we look at this picture, we realize that as we have lower precipitation and really hot temperatures, that'll be like desert. Low precipitation and low temperatures might be than the tundra area, typically. If we've got high precipitation, high temperatures, it's the rainforest. So you can see that temperature and precipitation are defining factors of what the biome will be. And then certain organisms will be adapted to live in those biomes. So if they are in areas with really low precipitation, they have to be adapted to the small amount of water available and be able to store their water. Okay, here is some biomes around the globe, and you notice that with latitude, you tend to get similar, like the semi-desert one tends to be at certain latitudes all the time, or this taiga, you can see it's always at the similar latitudes. So they tend to have that consistency because the latitude will give that certain temperature or climate as a result. So as there's higher temperature and higher rainfall, there tends to be a higher abundance of terrestrial life. And as we go in latitude away from the equator, as I mentioned, it's similar to going higher up in sea level. So it's similar to those mountain biomes. And besides these terrestrial biomes, we cannot forget that there's also aquatic biomes that will be found in all of different aquatic areas. So a habitat has a certain abiotic and biotic characteristics. So organisms need certain adaptations to survive there. And a range of an organism is all the places in the world that it is found. So there's the hoary mammoth range, be something like that. And it will have certain habitats in certain places within that range, but that's the extent of where it is found. The niche, you should know, is a role that an organism plays in an ecosystem. So that could be how it scratches and makes a little den, or it could be what food that it eats and removes from that area. It could be how it interacts with predators, the droppings that it leaves, all the role that it carries out is the niche. And it is known that there will be competition sometimes between two species in one niche. However, one will always win out. So two species will never, for a prolonged period of time, share a niche. So here there'll be an area where they overlap, will be an area of competition where these barnacles are both found for a short period of time before one of them wins out and takes over that area. So you guys can check out some cool barnacle videos. They're really neat creatures with little legs that come out to feed out of their little shell that they're hidden in. Okay, biodiversity is the variety of organisms in an area, and there are many different, even in one ecosystem, there might be a lot of habitats and niches and a lot of organisms that can live there. Looking at the aquatic ecosystem, some terms that describe the areas, we have the littoral zone that's lit with light, is how I like to look at it. And so light can get down to the bottom of a littoral zone, whereas light can get out into open water to the same depth, but this is called the limnetic zone, where there is no bottom with plants growing. So open water is the limnetic zone that has light, and littoral is the one that's lit right to the bottom, and it's on the edges of aquatic areas. Profundal is that dark area that has no light, and I guess benthic is just the very, very bottom all the way through like a lake or ocean, benthic zone. Okay, where the littoral zone is, we have rooted plants, photosynthesizers, whereas in the limnetic open water zone, we only have floating photosynthesizers because it's open water. The profundal zone, we can't have any plants there, light doesn't reach there, but dead stuff, detritus, can fall on the bottom, and certain organisms are adapted to eat detritus. So then we're going back to forest ecosystem, has a diversity of habitats as well. We talk about what things can have a negative impact on biodiversity. Humans, things like growing only one crop, monocultures, deforestation, and all the organisms that used to live in that forest will be gone. Fragmentation, where you put a road or something right through an area, so often organisms don't cross that fragmented wilderness, and then they can't mate or find food on the other side like they used to. Overhunting, pollution, and growth of cities, urbanization. So there's some things that can cause negative impact on biodiversity. Limiting factors are things that can control populations. The abiotic things could be like the water, soil, temperature, humidity, and biotic would be anything alive. So it could be parasites, competitors, predators, and the competition can limit the size of that population. If it is intraspecific competition, it would be members of the same species competing for like food or space. And if it's interspecific competition, it would be two different species competing for that food. So wolf versus coyote will be interspecific. Intra-specific would be wolf versus wolf. Intra, within the same species. Inter, two different species. And of course, if there's two species fighting for the same niche, one will win out. And predators are ones that hunt on prey. You should know those terms. And how many predators will affect how many prey, because they could overeat their prey. But also prey can limit the size of the predators because they are their food. So we can see that if predators go down in number, the prey will be more numerous, but then predator numbers can go up. So there seems to be this cyclical relationship between predator-prey or parasite and host. And it works the same for both. So there was a study here done on the lynx and hare. We can look at the real study just to show you kind of how they kind of summarized it to that the high numbers would be the prey here, the hare, and as you get more of the hare, you get more of the lynx or foxes that can eat them. But as there's more of them, the number of the hare goes down, so then the number of the predator goes down. So there is that cyclical relationship. And this was taken as actual data from trappers, lynx and hare, snowshoe hare. And you can see there is about a 10-year cycle where the predators are the red here, they're always in lower number, will cycle as the amount of hare is available. And so there's that cyclical 10 years, every 10 years it seems to cycle. And that's kind of a cool study over about 100 years. And they believe that other predator-prey relationships will have similar cycles. Okay, population sampling. To estimate populations, we can take small samples and extrapolate to the entire area. And so kind of realize that if we sample it just like taking a survey, we then can have a good idea what it's like everywhere. So if we're doing a transect, that would be a long narrow patch, and checking what organisms are found in that long narrow patch. Here's a 5 meter by 100 meter transect. Sometimes if it's immobile like plants, they may do a quadrat. Quadrat might be a 1 square meter area that they may count all the plants in that quadrat, or the density of the organisms living there. So here we have some quadrats being studied, and here they're doing quadrat studies in these shaded areas to get an idea of, it's just random 6 quadrats that were done, and then they extrapolate and have an average that they believe is fairly accurate for that whole area. So that wraps up chapter 3, my friends.